Let's go back to 2019. Do you remember that time? You know, when we could still freely walk on the streets without worrying about bumping into someone without a mask and suddenly feeling like we're playing Russian roulette? Yes, I'm talking about the time when Hong Kong citizens took to the streets to protest against the extradition bill. It was a grand parade, and I even remember my friend saying, "It looks like a huge music festival, just without the music and the festival." Then in 2020, the authorities passed the national security law. I remember spitting out my coffee when I was watching the news. I was like, wait, is this a joke? And then I realized, they're serious. I guess that's why I'm not a politician. I always see these things as a joke. Fast forward to now, 4 years have passed, and the number of teachers leaving Hong Kong has doubled. Yes, you heard me right, it has doubled. Can you believe it? I thought only the audience for my talk show had such a high turnover rate. But it looks like I was wrong. At least I'm not the only one making people want to run away. Now, let's take a look at the United States. They plan to hold the APEC summit in November, and they are debating whether to invite Hong Kong's chief executive Carrie Lam to attend. I'm just thinking, if I were the United States, I might say, we can invite her, but she has to sit in the back row, and we won't give her any coffee or snacks. I know, it's harsh, but sometimes you just have to do what you have to do. Well, I know all of this is heavy, but please remember that no matter what happens in the world, we can always face it with humor. So let's laugh out loud together and keep moving forward. On June 8, the U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee unanimously passed the 2023 Taiwan Assurance Act aimed at deterring China's aggression towards Taiwan, calling on U.S. authorities to develop response plans for China's possible invasion of Taiwan. Senator Rubio said in a statement that he firmly supports Taiwan, a precious ally of the United States, which is in line with U.S. and regional security interests, and Congress must continue to closely monitor hostile actions by the CCP against our allies. The first batch of the 21st Century Trade Initiative signed between Taiwan and the United States was criticized by Beijing as an unequal cover-up agreement. The trade agreement, the most complete and comprehensive since the severance of diplomatic ties between Taiwan and the United States, has sparked controversy. After their meeting at the White House on June 8, U.S. President Biden and British Prime Minister Johnson jointly announced the Atlantic Charter to address national security and economic threats posed by China and Russia. Biden said at a press conference after the meeting that they discussed national security risks posed by certain foreign investments. Johnson stressed that China and Russia want to use the openness of the United States and Britain to steal intellectual property and use technology for authoritarian purposes, but they will not succeed. The United States and China need to have a dialogue, not only for the United States but also for China and the world, Republican Senator Kennedy said in a speech to the Senate on June 7. He criticized China for not being willing to talk and said that not being willing to talk is China's loss. He said that given China's declining reputation around the world, it should re-engage with the world, including dialogue with the United States. The U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee unanimously passed a bill to strip China of its developing country status. This move has sparked dissatisfaction from China. How will it change China's position in international organizations? U.S. Secretary of State Blinken is expected to visit China next week to seek the establishment of a crisis management mechanism with China. Some experts point out that given the current structural competition between the United States and China, rather than cooperation, the two sides should seek to establish a framework of reluctant tolerance and restraint, thus achieving peaceful coexistence. The U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee passed the End China's Developing Country Status Act, which requires the Secretary of State to develop policies to cancel China's developing country treatment in future treaties and international organizations. The initiator of the bill believes that China is obviously no longer a developing country, and China has long used this status to gain unfair advantages. The bill requires the Secretary of State to seek to cancel China's developing country status in international organizations in which the United States participates. China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs responded that imposing the label of a developed country on China is a card played by the United States, and the intention is not about wine. It is expected that U.S. Secretary of State Blinken is preparing for his trip to Beijing. White House National Security Council Coordinator for Strategic Communications and Engagement Kurt Campbell said in an interview with Voice of America on June 9 that one of the reasons why Blinken is eager to go to Beijing is to open up communication channels between the senior military officials of the United States and China. As the U.S. and China are expected to resume high-level talks, U.S. National Security Advisor Sullivan recently proposed negotiations with China and Russia on nuclear arms control without preconditions. Russia has expressed openness to the talks, but China has not yet publicly responded to Sullivan's call. New Jersey Congressman Kim expressed concern about the lack of basic communication between the U.S. and China. However, some also point out that the understanding of cooperation between the US and China is far apart, making it difficult to establish mutual trust, and China's irresponsible behavior during the COVID-19 pandemic has also raised scholars' vigilance. China has called on the US to manage the entire process in high-level exchanges, and cannot be inconsistent in words and deeds. It emphasized that if the risk is used as a cover for decoupling, it will sow more seeds of discord in China-US relations. China's establishment of a listening post in Cuba marks a new stage of upgrading in China's overall defense strategy, which is a bit of a game changer, according to researchers. Choosing Cuba is also a deliberate provocation. Analysts say that Beijing seems to be seeking closer arrangements with Cuba, which is not surprising. Since the end of the Cold War, the two countries have established increasingly close relations. China is Cuba's largest trading partner and plays an important role in the island's agriculture, medicine, telecommunications, and infrastructure. Beijing also holds a significant portion of Havana's foreign debt. Havana denies that China plans to establish a spy base in Cuba. "I can tell you that this report is inaccurate based on the information we have," said General Lade, a spokesman for the U.S. Department of Defense, during a routine press conference on June 8 when asked about a Wall Street Journal report on China's establishment of an intelligence listening post in Cuba. Meanwhile, when asked if the U.S. supports NATO's opening of an office in Japan, the spokesperson said that the U.S. welcomes greater cooperation between NATO and its Asian allies. The 2023 Komodo naval exercise, involving 36 navies including the U.S. and China, concluded in Indonesia on June 8. Experts believe that this joint exercise further enhances Jakarta's international voice, but is unable to effectively mediate U.S.-China differences. Moreover, as the exercise is not targeted, ASEAN countries find it difficult to reach a consensus on responding to Beijing's expansion in the South China Sea issue. The Czech foreign minister confirmed that Taiwan's foreign minister Wu Zhaoxie will visit Prague, and Beijing warned Europe to abide by the One China policy. South Korea has summoned the Chinese ambassador to protest his remarks on South Korean policy. The ruling party leader in South Korea has declined an invitation to dine with the Chinese ambassador. Chinese ambassador Xing Haiming accused South Korea of being influenced by the U.S. and hoped that South Korea could free itself from external interference when dealing with its relations with China. Xing Haiming also said that those who bet against China now will regret it in the future, and those who bet on the U.S. winning will regret it in the future. Taiwanese strategic experts believe that China is attempting to prevent Japan from becoming a platform for the U.S. to implement its Asian policy. Japanese scholars believe that Japan should maintain a strong and firm attitude in dialogue with China and say what needs to be said. Recently, Chinese military planes and warships have had repeated friction with the U.S. military in the South China Sea and Taiwan Strait. Some experts believe that this series of actions is what Xi Jinping referred to as rough waters and dangerous shoals, and that China is attempting to dominate the Indo-Pacific region. According to Japanese media, this is the 11th time in the past 2 years that Chinese warships have entered Japanese waters. On the same day, 2 Chinese Coast Guard ships also entered the disputed waters between the two countries. The Japanese Ministry of Defense expressed strong concern to Beijing about this. Observers pointed out that the employment of retired NATO pilots to train the Chinese Air Force may date back to nearly a decade ago. Germany has previously conducted formal military training programs with China. Military exchanges of technology and tactical experience are common, and retired military personnel bringing their unique skills to the private sector is also common. A German business leader pointed out that due to cost and geopolitical reasons, China is becoming less attractive to German companies as an international base to ensure competitiveness. A survey by the German Chamber of Commerce and Industry, DIHK, showed that nearly 1/5 of surveyed companies have shelved their business plans in China and are diversifying their investments away from China. 1/6 of companies are preparing for the worst-case scenario, including possible withdrawal from China. A batch of court documents seen by the Wall Street Journal shows how former senior executive of the China Export-Import Bank, Dai Chuning, sought personal gain as the Chinese government attempted to use its financial power to gain influence in the developing world. The case rare reveals how corruption played a role in China's efforts to expand its influence in the Southern Hemisphere using loans. Saudi Arabia said that its relationship with the US and China is not a zero-sum game, but it needs to be vigilant against China's expanding military presence in the Middle East. Members of the European Parliament and the president of the French Women's Ready-to-Wear Federation have called for legislation and regulatory measures to address the Chinese fast fashion brand Shein. Bloomberg reported that China is privately lobbying the EU to abandon previously proposed trade restrictions. The restrictions target Chinese companies that are accused by the EU of providing assistance to Russian combat resources. The giant yellow duck has returned to Hong Kong after a decade, with a pair of 18-meter-tall ducks stopping near the City Hall. The giant yellow duck series was created by Dutch artist Hofmann and has appeared in many cities around the world. When the giant yellow duck appeared in Hong Kong in 2013, someone replaced the 6 tanks behind the tankman with a row of giant yellow ducks, which angered the Beijing government. The giant yellow duck has also become a symbol of protest in many countries. Recently, there have been online posts in China expressing unwillingness to fight for the country. The post stated that if there is a war, they will not go, and they will not let their children go. Wang Xinxian, a specially appointed professor at the East Asian Institute of National Chengchi University in Taiwan, pointed out that in the past, Chinese people had a higher sense of social security, but in recent years, with the economic downturn, rising unemployment rates, chaos in epidemic prevention and control, and a shift in epidemic prevention policies from zero tolerance to a more flexible approach, people's sense of social security has sharply declined. Under the restless and conflicting social psychology, patriotism is even losing to reality. There could be many factors that have led to the decline in their patriotism. It could be due to economic factors such as rising unemployment rates, economic downturns, and a decline in social security. It could also be due to social and political factors such as conflicts and tensions with other countries, changes in government policies, and a lack of trust in the government. According to an exclusive report by Reuters citing anonymous sources, Taiwan's Foreign Minister Joseph Wu will visit Europe next week and will attend a diplomatic event with the Czech president, which is likely to trigger China's dissatisfaction. Data released by China's National Bureau of Statistics on Friday showed that CPI rose 0.2% year-on-year in May, an increase of 0.1 percentage points from the previous month, but still lower than market expectations. PPI fell 4.6% year-on-year in May, marking the 8th consecutive month of decline and a further widening of the decline from the previous month. It is also higher than expected and has reached a new low since February 2016. Chinese outdoor brands are also increasing their influence in the world. The export volume of tents and waterproof fabrics for outdoor use has increased rapidly. Chinese companies such as Knockle, Mocad, and others, which have accumulated strength by manufacturing overseas brands, have launched their own brands, attracting consumers in countries such as Japan. Chinese battery maker CATL and PTTPCL plan to establish a battery production facility in Thailand as part of the Thai oil giant's plan to launch electric vehicles for sale in Southeast Asia in the coming years. China's inflation rebounded last month, but the Producer Price Index (PPI) for industrial producers has seen its largest decline in over 7 years. Some analysts believe that the 3 main drivers of China's economy are weak, and China's economy has actually entered a deflationary period. Chinese companies are facing heavy deflationary pressure, and both internal and external demand has stalled, making a strong recovery seem like a distant dream. Statistics show that prices in China's consumption and production sectors have significantly decreased, leading to deflation and a sharp increase in risk. Economists believe that more currency should flow towards private enterprises and middle-income groups. In the long term, a series of structural problems in the Chinese economy will cause the growth rate to hover around 2% to 3%. How do we view the current phenomenon of declining export and import volumes of foreign companies in China? Dr. Tsai Ming Fang, a professor at Tamkang University in Taiwan, said that the most important reason is the U.S. technology control. Since 2018, many high-end and high-value-added products are no longer produced in China and must be transferred to countries with a reliable supply chain in the U.S. If we look at the destination of China's exports, the share of China's major trading partners is quietly changing. The share of export destinations such as Japan and the United States, which have always occupied a major position, is declining, while the share of Russia and ASEAN is rapidly increasing. On June 8, well-known Chinese writer Zhang Yihei announced on Facebook that she had been restricted from leaving the country, writing, "I was declared a national prisoner yesterday and cannot take a step out of the country." Zhang was scheduled to leave on July 2, and on June 7, she participated in an event at the Chinese Academy of Arts, where she received praise from senior officials at the Ministry of Culture. Camille Wyatt, a 19-year-old female college student from Xinjiang, was arrested by Chinese police at the end of last year for posting a blank paper protest video on WeChat. Recently, it was reported that she was convicted of promoting extremism on March 25 of this year, but her sentence is not yet clear. This charge carries a maximum sentence of 5 years. In addition to suppressing the Uyghur ethnic group in Xinjiang, the Chinese government has planned to close, demolish, or forcibly redesign mosques in Hui Muslim settlements throughout the country, dismissing dome and minaret features of Arab architecture as evidence of foreign influence on Islam in China. For the Wei residents of Nagu and Shadian towns, mosque renovations signify that the government will more comprehensively suppress their way of life. Last week, a plan to partially demolish a mosque in Yunnan province, China, sparked clashes between police and civilians, drawing attention from the international community to the Chinese government's plan to sinicize Islam over the next 5 years. According to political lecturer Steve Sang, Xi Jinping sees foreign religious ideologies or traditions as a threat, and Islam is a particular concern for him. These mosques are symbols of the Chinese government's recognition of its mistakes during the Cultural Revolution, according to Ruslan Yusupov, a Harvard scholar who studies China and Islam. Especially the mosque in Shadian, he said, it is both a reminder of violence and a reminder of state-supported revival. However, in recent years, the government has increasingly restricted Islam. The media always protects officials with problems, but worries about the morals of ordinary people. In fact, it is not necessary. Instead, we should pay more attention to the livelihoods of the lower classes of society and seek more job opportunities for young people. Young people are not seeking Beijing, but seeking good luck by burning incense and worshipping Buddha, as unemployed people in China have no livelihood. In the past year, China has made tremendous strides in space exploration. It has established a space station carrying astronauts, landed a probe on Mars, and become the first country to land on the far side of the moon. China has expressed its ambition to establish a base on the moon and send people to Mars. 12 Japanese miracle drugs were once highly sought after in China and became symbolic products of pre-pandemic inbound consumption. These miracle drugs are now also one of the best-selling products among foreign visitors to Japan. In recent years, online bullying on Chinese social media has become increasingly prominent. 2 weeks ago, a primary school student in Wuhan was hit and killed by a teacher's car on campus. The student's mother went to the school to demand an explanation and allegedly fell to her death due to online bullying, once again drawing public attention to the phenomenon of online bullying. A student at Yangshi Industrial Vocational and Technical College in China found what appeared to be a mouse head in their food at the cafeteria on the 1st of this month. The school responded that it was a duck neck, sparking a several-day-long dispute over whether it was a mouse or a duck. When it comes to basketball, you may think of the National Basketball Association, NBA, in the United States. However, in China, a basketball tournament called NBA is about to be held nationwide. The Chinese Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Affairs and the General Administration of Sports announced on Wednesday, June 7, that the National and Beautiful Rural Basketball Tournament, NBA, will be held for the first time from June to October this year. In China, choosing to take the Japanese language in the college entrance examination, Gaokao, can easily score high marks, and more people are learning Japanese. Coupled with the demand for studying abroad in Japan, Japanese foreign teachers are becoming more and more popular. Many schools have increased salaries when recruiting foreign teachers. The Chinese government may issue new regulations for regulating artificial intelligence. Writer and independent commentator Fu Zibin believes that Beijing's intervention in the development of artificial intelligence will backfire, as not only will regulation stifle vitality, but even national investment will have a counterproductive effect, as seen from the lessons of the Soviet Union. It is reported that 85% of foreigners who obtained South Korean residence visas or green cards through the Korean investment immigration system between 2018 and 2022 are Chinese. By investing 500 million won for those under 55 years old and 300 million won for those over 55 years old in designated financial products specified by the Korean government, they can obtain residency qualifications and green cards after 5 years. In the Chinese college entrance examination, there was a question that required an explanation of a statement made by Chinese President Xi Jinping. Although there have been many patriotic-oriented questions in the past, it is rare for a question to directly mention Xi Jinping's statement. As a result, there have been comments from prospective college entrance examination candidates and their parents that it seems that they have to learn Xi Jinping's quotes if they want to go to college. A recent study by Chinese scholars shows that the lifetime infertility rate among Chinese women has increased from 1.29% to 5.16% over the past decade, and this number will continue to rise in the future. Passengers on Taiwan's subway can hear Korean broadcasts announcing the arrival of Taipei Station. According to Taiwan media such as the China Times, as the number of Korean tourists visiting Taiwan continues to increase, the Taipei Metro Company announced on the 6th that it will add Korean broadcasts for arriving trains at 15 stations near popular tourist attractions and important transfer stations for Korean tourists who arrive in Taiwan.